Welcome to A&N In Depth. This week, we're going to talk about money. How do you make money at home? This pandemic has kept us at home for weeks. Is there any hope that you would go back to the job that you had? We've had millions of job losses around the world. And what do you do in that situation? Now, God is really keen on talking about money. You have many verses in the New Testament that deal with this subject directly. Today, I'm really excited to bring in our two guests that will discuss this issue. First of all, I want to call Chip. Where is Chip? He's right there. Chip, yes. Welcome to A&N In Depth. How you doing, mate?
Hey, thank you for having me. I'm blessed. I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. Chip, we're going to talk to you in a bit, but first I want to introduce you guys to Daniel. Daniel is right there. He's a financial planner, so he can solve all of your financial issues. Isn't that right, Daniel?
Yes, thank you, Sam. Thank you for the invite. Certainly not all issues, but when it comes to finances, making wise decisions, I am here to help.
Fantastic. Chip, I want to start with you. What do you make of all of this staying at home and businesses closing, and the world has turned upside down? Everything we thought was certain suddenly isn't. How are you making sense of all of this?
Yes, Sam, it was difficult at first because I'm naturally an extrovert and I like being around people. At my business, what I do, photography, videography, live streaming, and things like that, involve people, actually human interaction. So at first I'm like, oh my goodness, my whole business is going to come crumbling down. But then I had a word that I like to use. It's called pivot. I said, you know what? I knew that we can pivot. I knew that we can, as an entrepreneur, full-time business person, I knew that things would be different. I know I couldn't go to large gatherings anymore to film or photograph birthday parties or retirement parties or anything like that, or weddings. So now it was just all about pivoting and seeing what I can do virtually and moving into that space. And so it's a lot going on. It's a lot of people that's been affected. Especially in the hospitality industry. So anybody in the hotel business, anybody like in my business, I do a lot of events and weddings and all types of corporate gatherings, you know. So I really think that we're still moving in the direction to try to get better. But for now, I'm just looking at ways. Well, I'm looking at ways and now to make money at home. By teaching. I'll go into that a little bit later in the program, by teaching, by consulting, by helping people, and by mentoring people.
So not only did you find a way to pivot and do what you do in this new world, you found a way to help others do exactly the same thing for their businesses and their focus.
Exactly.
Daniel, let me come to you now. I want to talk to you about this concept that, look, church is the church. The Bible is the Bible, but my money is my money. You know, that's mine. I do whatever I want with it. There's no spiritual realm when it talks about money. Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts about that?
No, not at all, Sam. Actually, everything that we have belongs to God. You know, our lives, we have a tendency, I think, as a society to separate what we're actually, our practical life with our spiritual life. And the reality is everything belongs to the Lord. He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills, right? It's all his. And in fact, money is, in my opinion, the primary way we demonstrate worship to God. It's the closest thing that we're going to make an idol. And it's the best thing that we can demonstrate that we love the Lord by using it in a way that's consistent with what he's given it for. Not just giving, but also in the way that we spend and the way that we enjoy it, because God says he's given us all things freely to enjoy, but we shouldn't use that inappropriately. We shouldn't waste it on pleasures that are obviously not of him, but he's given us many things to enjoy. And Chip's a great example of that, talking about pivoting, right? He's given us resources for those of us who have the resources. He's given us those resources so that we can be smart, we can be proactive, and we can be thinking about, okay, I can't do those social gatherings, but now I have internet, where we have a change in infrastructure that allows us to be able to go and do something different. But absolutely, Sam, everything that we have is a gift from God, the good things and the hard things.
You've just expanded that quite a bit, because there are a lot of Christians, not least Seventh-day Adventists, who mostly watch this channel. This is the official channel of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and there's a lot of non-Adventists. We call them non-Adventist. What does that mean, non-Adventist? It means that you're not an Adventist yet. If you keep watching this channel, there's a high probability that you'll become one. Just warning you. So for the people who watch this channel, some have the idea that, look, what God is interested in is my tithe and offering. That's the main thing. If I give my tithe and offering, then I can do whatever I like with the rest. But what you're saying is, no, God is interested in how you spend every dollar, how you use your money. And that makes it, that make it harder, or does it make it easier?
Well, it's how our relationship with God is. It's not segmented to one thing. It's our entire lives. Our whole life is a worship. Our whole life is an offering to God. I mean, He's bought us twice. Right? He made us, and He saved us. We are ultimately His. From a Christian perspective, we belong to Him, and everything that we have belongs to Him. And it's not like He's an evil master that has hard things for us all the time. He has good things for us. He wants the best things for us. And so our whole life is an offering before Him, and all that we have, it shouldn't, I understand it being somewhat of a transformative concept potentially to someone who hasn't thought of it that way, but it's very consistent with Scripture, that God says all that we have is His. We are the vine and the branches.
Yeah,
let me bring you in here. Do you agree with this, and how do you live your life in this particular way?
Yeah, what Daniel said is so true. I mean, we know in the Bible, in Matthew, it says, we cannot serve two masters, right? And I really believe that we need to put God to the test during these times. And I really believe in my life. I say, you know what, God, I need to put you to the test, because I know that everything that's good and perfect comes from you. So when that happens, I'm not worried as much about it. We're worrying about the economy. We're worrying about what's going on in the world. I'm going to be concerned, but I'm going to put it on God, not in me. And I put my trust there. And I really believe that not only as Seventh-day Adventists, but as Christians, just of Christ followers, we have to put our trust in Him, especially when it comes to our finances, and especially when it comes to businesses, because, like I said, you can only hope for other people to bail you out so much. God is the one that owns everything. Like Daniel said, cattle on 1,000 hills, right? So I'm a firm believer in that. And working for myself has tested my faith more in the last 5 years, more than I think anything else. Because, when you don't have clients, you don't get paid. You don't have business, you don't get paid. So when the economy's down, guess what happens? I don't get paid. Daniel doesn't have people to counsel with financial things because they don't have extra income. But God always provides, right, Daniel? He always comes through with a time when we don't see it, but if we put Him to the test. He said, what did He say? He says, prove me, right? And He said, when we prove Him, we're like, God, we're putting our trust in You, and we're saying as business people that it's not us, it's You. It was before the pandemic, but and before this, but now even more than ever, I'm so excited that I get to do that. So I'm in the mindset that we need to be giving more, even more than before.
Right, and we don't necessarily give in ways that is just to the church.
Yes,
we give to others. We give to those who are in need. And the Lord says, when did we go and visit you? When did we give to you clothing when you didn't have any? To those you've done to the least of these, you've done to me, right? And I think the same concept applies. If we're surrendering our finances to what we believe God is calling us to do, and we're being faithful with that, not trying to overly sort of say, I'm going to give everything to tomorrow, and then God's going to give me everything again, and then I'm going to give everything again the next day, right? I think there's an element of listening, an element of prayer, an element of understanding responsibility in our roles, to where we understand, okay, we have an amount we can give, and we're going to give it. But we do have a promise that He says, like you mentioned, to test Him in that. And if we do, He will give it back to us, pressed down, overflowing, right? He doesn't just return
Daniel,
it to us part for part.
You've been helping a lot of people to understand the spiritual dimension of finances. And I want to dig into your story a little bit. So you worked on the Hill. That simply means you were in Washington in politics of some sort. And then you changed and you went into finances. You liked it, and you kept going deeper and deeper. And as a Christian, you see that God is in everything, including this. Tell us a little bit about that experience.
About seeing God in the time right now.
About changing your career, changing your your focus.
God has really made us as dynamic, but also unique people. So there are times in our lives where we're going to be focused on one career path, one concept, one way of operating. And we have the ability to do a variety of things, right? We can, all of us have potential, varying amounts of potential in different things. I mean, Chip, you can tell just by listening to him that he's an outgoing, he's a proactive guy. He's going to do a great job probably with marketing and that kind of thing. That's awesome. That's a skill set that he has that he can then go and apply that to web design. He can apply that, like he said, to physical social gatherings. He can go to a variety of places. When it comes to changes in life and career path, I think there's an element of prayer. There's an element of consulting wise counsel. And you go and you say, okay, what's before me? When I changed in my career path a little bit, it was, I didn't mention this before, but I was focused on environmental issues when it came to politics. And I realized that while I was going to have an impact for people eventually, somehow, it wasn't as practical. It wasn't as face-to-face as you get when you're able to sit down with somebody and say, hey, you know what, if you can do these 2 things or 3 things, it's going to transform your life, right? Having an emergency fund, not getting into debt. I mean, these are very simple one-on-one things, having a budget, but those are the things that are ultimately transformative for most people. They can do those couple of things. It's going to make a huge difference. And I love being able to sit with somebody, do a financial plan, and then 3 months later, have them come back and see it all marked up and people saying, this has really made an impact for me. It's been really helpful. And that sort of immediate feedback was something that I didn't get in politics. And I really appreciated getting involved with and making a real impact.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Growing up, I remember my father, I grew up in Brazil, and my dad, at one point we hit an 80% a month inflation at the end of the 80s. Now, 80% a month inflation is absolutely insane. You had to go in the morning when you were paid, and by the end of that afternoon, you had to pay all your bills. Otherwise, you couldn't pay the next day because they were too expensive for you. And I remember living through that very difficult time. And my dad, just before this crash, he bought a huge pickup truck in a lease kind of thing. But it's a weird thing. I don't know if you have this in America, but at the time it was quite a normal way to buy a car. You would pay monthly, and every month there would be a draw, and a certain number of people who were in that pot would get the car, and then the next month you're waiting, but you still pay the same amount with or without the car. It was absolutely nuts. And it was a Ford pickup truck, and he bought it. Now, we were, quite comfortable before this crash, but afterwards we had this car. We got the draw. We had this car, and we hardly had money for fuel now that we had the car. And I remember my parents deciding to do something crazy, to travel about 12 hours by car, buy grapes, grapes, produce grapes, travel back 12 hours and sell the grapes at the beach in crates. And to me, looking back, I'm like, my father was a barrister. He was a lawyer, and for him to be able to think through and say, you know what, things are desperate. We need to find a way. What's the only thing we have? This car. What can we do? Let's buy grapes. And that was I was 6, 7 at the time, and that made a profound impact in me as I thought, hey, I'm here as a child helping my family sell grapes, and we're getting through the difficult crisis. And Chip, I want you to tell us what it takes to pivot, because it's not easy, right? When everything is okay and you try to change your career, it's hard. But in this situation, so I'm going to throw to you Mr. Joseph, who's in his 50s. He's an admin assistant somewhere, and now he hasn't gone to the office. At first, he was redundant. Now the office has let him off. He doesn't know what he's going to do. No company is hiring. What can Mr. Joseph do? How did you pivot, and how do you help Mr. Joseph?
Well, what I first think of is, what do I love to do, and what is that I'm good at? It's 3 things actually. What do I love to do? What can I make a financial, at least some kind of money on it? And then what fuels my desire to keep on doing it? Because you can't do something. I mean, of course, if you're doing a pivot, of course, your dad, all right, Sam, didn't sell grapes forever, right? Of course, he went back to doing what he did. So if Mr. Joseph let's say he's an admin assistant, maybe he can be a virtual administrative assistant, because right now,
What does that mean?
that means that the people, I hire one right now. So someone can do my copy editing, my writing, someone can do my flyers, someone can do my email marketing, and they don't have to be right there. I could just outsource it to them. So if they have a strong voice, they can do voiceovers, just so many different things. So they can do administrative tasks remotely. That's what I mean, a virtual assistant. So I would think of those tasks of, what do you like to do? What can you make money and financial gain? And what drives you to do more? So for me, it was teaching. It was natural. I was a natural teacher before I became full-time. I taught in Baltimore and Maryland for 5 years. And I said, I know the process of teaching. I know the process of scope and sequence. Now I just have to put it in a virtual online course situation. Now, the hard thing about this whole virtual thing is everybody's teaching and everybody has something on free for YouTube. So how do I get people to buy something from me that is already online for free on YouTube or wherever? And what I realized is that it's not about what's free, it's about the value you bring. So the more value you bring, like if the administrative professional, the more value, people buy you before they buy the product, the more value you bring. Just on this program, to get me on here, get Daniel, we were suggested because we brought value to it. You understand what I'm saying?
That's right.
If we're not bringing value to this program, we would not be sitting in these chairs right now. So I'm hopeful.
Right.
That's what I want people to know. Not stop thinking about how to make money, but how to bring value.
Yeah. And, Sam, just go on with that story you just told, what is the car today? It isn't the Ford pickup truck. It's the internet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, we're at home, we're stuck. That's the vehicle.
Yes.
The question is, how are we using that vehicle? Just like your dad did. Sure, he was a big shot somewhere. Well, we were all big shots in one way or another, right? We all have that pride that says, no, I'm really somebody. But at a time like this, we have to step back and say, look, I'm going to humble myself and recognize that when times are tough and money isn't making it. I mean, I agree with you, Chip. I hope that everybody can find something to love to do. But the reality is there are some jobs that very few people are going to love to do, and they need to be done.
Sure.
So at a time like this, just like getting the grapes, you might say, you know what, I'm not really into data entry, but right now I can sit in front of my computer and I can do data entry and I can make $15, $20 an hour US.
True.
That's great. And you might need to do that for a year and a half. And maybe that is a pivot that gets you into some other job that you're really excited about. But the reality is we all have something like that. That's a resource. And if we can think creatively about it, we might come up with something that's going to help us to be able to bridge the gap until this wears down, until social gatherings happen. And let me say, I really think that we're going to get back to social gatherings because we're social people, right? I mean, we want to sing together. We want to worship the Lord with our voices. People are going to do that again. And they're going to want to go to birthday parties. They're going to want to go to sporting events. And when that happens, if we can figure out ways to be in that, that's great. One thing that I think about, and it's, there's a million ideas, but one that I was thinking of is we don't have physical sports right now, but esports is a growing thing. And maybe there's an opportunity in esports for people who are able to do marketing.
What is esports? What does that mean? Is that virtual sports?
It's people playing video games and people watching other people play video games. I don't know much about it at all, but I've heard that, they're growing, the attendance is growing. So, that's one of those places. What coronavirus has really done, in my opinion, is it isn't really a new thing necessarily. What it's done is it's transitioning from sort of the old way. We had this change that was happening gradually in our society, and coronavirus has sped it up, right? We were already moving online with so many things, and now it's like we got to get there.
Here. Yeah.
Zoom was a decent product. It was a good product. It's growing, and then all of a sudden, coronavirus happened, and now it's going crazy, right? It's the same concept. Data centers, Amazon delivery, getting your groceries delivered for people who don't want to have to go in the grocery store, all that kind of thing. And there's
Instacart, and there are other companies that are doing this. Do you think this is a sped up transition like we've seen in the past, for example, from horse and carriage to motor vehicles? Although there was no disease that got rid of the horses that would speed up the cars, that was a more gradual process. But we've been sort of creating tools in the digital landscape that allow for collaboration since 2003. That's really the year that Facebook really exploded and came out properly. There were a few tools before that, but we seemed obsessed with the idea of doing things together. And now that we have a maturity of those tools, those are the only tools we've got. So, I'm sure you're familiar with that curve of technology adoption. That you have the innovators, then you have the early adopters, then you have the early majority and late majority, and we've just, is it your opinion that we've just sped through that, so that people that would take normally many years to get through have suddenly were dunked in it? And does that create trouble or opportunity? What are your thoughts, Chip? Maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think wow, that's a great question. I think it creates opportunity. We're in a place that we've never been in. And I think we're in a place that we're still in flux, right? I think that we're looking at things. It's kind of like you're on a job, and then all of a sudden, layoffs coming, and then the next day they tell you, oh, everybody has to go. So it's no runway, no preparation. I just remember when we got the notice, because I had some things scheduled in mid-March, and then they said, oh, by the way, stay at home, no social gatherings. I was like, wait a second, I was just on a plane from Miami to here like a week ago. Then this happened. So things are moving we're moving so quickly that we didn't know where to go. Now, I think we're at the point where we're like, okay, we're here now. How can we make the best of it? And then going forward, which I think, I agree with Daniel, we will get back to social gatherings. I don't know how big they will be, but I think we will, because that's what we are going to do. But I do think that we have to be extremely careful when we're at a point to say, where we are and how we're going to move forward with anything, because I think that we are at a point in life where things are happening so quickly, and just in the state of our world, and we know if you're Christian, you're Seventh-day Adventist, we know the future. We know Jesus is coming back, but I think that we have to be ready, right? We're watching and praying to see. So I'm of the mindset that I'm ready to do with my pivots, but I'm ready to also go back to normal as well. I mean, we're if they say go back to the offices and tomorrow or next week, I'll say, great, I'm ready.
Sign me up.
Yeah. With caution, of course, with caution.
And I think there are some changes that we'll be able to look back on and say, oh, absolutely, that was when this particular technology took off and these particular technologies kind of passed away. But I would expect that I think it's more cyclical than just an end. I think it's a downward trend for the moment for some of those technologies. I mean, as it always changes, slowly and then all at once, right? And we might be at one of those all at once moments, but it'll still be slow after this. Once we get through this, we'll revert a little bit back to the way things were, and then we will transition on. And again, new technologies will continue to take over. And if we knew those technologies beforehand, if we had the insight to know the second and third derivative actions as a result of what's the decisions being made today, then you're going to be a great investor, and you have great opportunity to figure out where to pivot to. I think it's hard to know that. And that's why I think, as Chip mentioned before, you can add in a little bit of, well, what do you actually enjoy doing? And where do you see things going? Put those together, and you're likely to end up in a place that's going to be beneficial for the future.
So in a very practical way, Chip, you mentioned the notion of doing voiceover.
Yes.
Are you telling me that if you just read properly, if you can read properly and have a half decent voice, and you can make money just doing that?
I have a good friend of mine who is a human resource professional. He called me. He reached out to me on LinkedIn, and he said, "Hey, Chip, I know you do some videos. Do you need a voiceover person?" And I said, "You know what, Charles? I do. I can use you for some stuff. You never know." He got a microphone like you have, Sam, and he's doing some voiceover work. Not paid yet, but eventually this gets him started because he has extra time. He's home. He has a microphone. He has the stuff. He has the software. Remember, there's a saying that I've heard a while ago. It's called "the gatekeepers are gone." So the barriers to entry for you to do something are very low. To be a voiceover artist, you would need a home, go to a professional studio with padded walls. You understand? And pay hundreds of dollars per hour. The gatekeepers are gone. You can do pretty much what you want to do. If you want to be a virtual coach, a virtual financial planner, Daniel, you can pretty much do that. I mean, yes, you need the certifications, I know, but I'm saying to do this, there's not a lot of barriers to entry for any of these things. And technology is making it easier, even as we do the stream today. Think about it, how we would do this. Usually we would be in a studio somewhere, right? But we are all in the comfort of our own homes. And the gatekeepers, there's no one to tell us that we can't do this and publish this to the internet.
Absolutely right. So I would be here in my, if general conference experiences a lot of cuts, I may resort to voiceovers. I speak Portuguese and English, and I'll give it a go with different actors and so on. Very good. Okay, well, you mentioned writing. I want to be very practical about this. Voice, I just mentioned voice123.com is one website that you can register and start doing voiceovers this afternoon. As you're watching this video, you can go to Voice123 and you can register, and then you can bid, and people will listen to a little sample of your voice. And if you have that kind of voice that they're looking for, and that's it, your first paid contract. So that's one way to do it. You also mentioned writing. There are some platforms that pay you to write to them, and there's also freelance websites like freelancer.com and others. You can register as a copywriter. Oh, but I've never done that before. Well, it's time. Can you write a few sentences put together? So that's another way that you could do it. What else did you mention? Virtual assistants, data entry.
Data entry. You can also do live coaching. If you're a counselor or something like that, if you have a certified counselor, you can do online counseling. It's just a lot of different things that you can do virtually with people.
Yeah, and if you don't have any certification, find something that other people are looking for, and then offer it at some kind of price and see what happens.
Online exercising and everything. There's so many things.
Yeah,
online exercising. Ask Joe in England. Yeah,
I think there's a huge demand right now for small retail establishments to have a web presence that allows for web sales. Shopify is the big guru that's been taking advantage of that. But I mean, think about it in a small scale system, not the large cities, but medium-sized small cities throughout the country. They need to reach their local people who would otherwise shop there. And how are they setting up for their delivery? And I think there's a great opportunity there right now, like today.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's talk about the pitfalls and some of the dangers of online working from home and online. What is it that there are a couple of things that you would watch out for so that you don't get so excited about this idea, get into it, and then find it's all a castle of cards that's just tumbling down?
For me, I would say is boundaries. You have to have, when you're working from home, it's great. And we know, at least where we are in the Baltimore, Washington, D.C. area, a lot of people telecommute. That's a big buzzword, right? Telecommute. And but the boundaries between work and life can get blurred, because when you're working from home, you're always on, it seems. You're always on a call, you're always on something. So I think those boundaries, even though we're going to rest on Sabbath, is those things that we have to say, you know what, we need to have that time for our lunch break. We need this time for exercise. I think that's one of the pitfalls for me, at least, that I struggle with, is just making sure that I take time for me. Because when you sit in front of a computer screen all day looking at it, or you're even interacting, it can wear on you. So we have to make sure that we have those boundaries set in place.
Excellent. Daniel, do you see anything? Is there any fraud that people need to be aware of as trying to do this, and that you've noticed or seen? Maybe there isn't, but I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a little bit outside of my expertise. For my personal experience, you just want to have the mind to be able to look at an email or look at a contract or whatever that comes across your table and say, okay, is this legit? What I think one of the troubles that comes from doing online is that somebody can put on a jacket and put on a headset and get themselves a screen and say, oh, I'm X and such from ABC place, and you don't really know. One of the advantages of having a physical office is you show up, you know where they are, you know how to get in touch with them. It's not just a virtual presence that could potentially disappear. And I think there's some value in, like having certifications or having some sort of a way for people to be in touch with you that's beyond the electronic, telling them about where you live or how to get in touch with you, or if they ever do need to file a complaint, where they can file a complaint, or whatever it is, things that might be able to help people understand that. Practically speaking, my biggest concern would be the infrastructure. Do you have a computer that can run a Zoom or this kind of thing? My internet at home is actually extremely slow, despite being miles from Ashburn, which has all the computer hubs for the area. So that's a problem for me. A legit problem is that in 5 minutes, my internet could just start totally falling apart. You want to try to make sure you've got the infrastructure in place before you start doing a business that's dependent upon the infrastructure.
Yes.
And that's that's kind of a no-brainer, but it's, let's not overlook that there's 5 or 10 things you just need to have: a headset or microphone of some kind, and that kind of thing before you're going to move forward in it.
Yeah, and Daniel, I think that's so true, because we've seen it where we've seen churches or we've seen other businesses do a live webinar, and we want the content. And I had a friend of mine that did one, and the internet just totally went out. And it was the fault of her own. It just totally went out. Too many people are on this Zoom on a certain day, and it just dropped. So, and I think there's nothing you can do about it but have a backup. And you're just hoping for the best. So yeah, those are definitely some of the pitfalls. And connection. We thrive, like you said earlier. We thrive on person to person shaking hands, or just that touch there. And I'm hoping that when we get back to that we can get back to that personal connection. You never know what you have until it's gone, right?
Right.
So, you never realize what you have until it's gone.
And for a lot of people who are working from home, usually when you work from home, your kids are in school, people are out. You've got an office that you don't really have to be at. It looks nice enough in the background so you can work. And now it's like all the kids are home, everybody's around all the time. I mean, things are tight. It's not ideal, for doing this kind of thing. But at the same time, again, at times like this, you got to do what you got to do. And thinking outside the box, it's gonna really be helpful. And just one more thing to say about that, and I think, Chip, you've done a good job of this, of being diversified in your business, right? You do a variety of things. And just like you mentioned, Sam, when your dad was in a situation where things were tight, he started a different kind of way of earning some money. And I think this moment now is a great time. If you're still employed, or you're working 1 week, taking a week off the next week because of the contract you're on or whatever, take some time to develop yourself and think of, is there another business? Is there something else I could do that could earn me a little bit of money on the side? People talked about side hustles in years prior, but now it's like, hey, this is just going to help us get through the year, right? With the income that we had before. And that's really helpful for not only them, but our society as a whole. Go ahead.
Exactly right. In the past, you would have a career for your entire life.
Yes.
And you would work for 1 or 2 employers if something bad happened.
Yes.
And then you would retire and live happily until your death.
Yes.
That's like the gold standard
of
of
anymore.
the 20th century. I think that world is no longer in existence. Would you agree?
Oh yeah,
Right.
that's my parents were educators. My father passed in 2012, and that's what he did. He was known for one thing. He was at one school, one thing, and for 36 years, almost 40 years of his 70-some year life, that's what he did. You know what I mean? So I was like, wow, one thing.
And Sam, you're asking 2 entrepreneurs, so you're going to get a biased answer a little bit. It still happens, just not as much, right?
Not as much.
It's a bad research group, is what you're saying. If you really want the truth about that, it's a bad research group. But you've got this opportunity now, which has opened up. Every time that there is a shaking of the world, there are opportunities that open up, and you can take that opportunity. You can be open to new experiences or not, but it will get uncomfortable. And now let me get uncomfortable in this question that I'm going to ask, because there's also the notion, And I see this in my children. I have 3 boys, 10, 8, and 5, and I bring them up in almost every broadcast because my life is around them. So what else am I going to talk about? And there are sometimes they need to get some work done, and then they look at me with full sincerity in their eyes, and they say, "Daddy, but I just don't want to." And they really mean it. They don't want to do it. And I have to either inspire them or coerce them, but they will do it. Now school is over today, and my wife was just telling me how relieved she is, how a weight has gone off her shoulders because she doesn't have to, keep them active and get all the tasks done from school. But they just don't want to. And I think there is a notion that some people, they know what they could do, but they just don't want to. And it takes a lot to take responsibility over your life and say, look, I'm going to try everything I absolutely can. And when I can no longer, I will depend on my church, and I will depend on society. I will depend on others. But first, I will absolutely do my best with all of the tools that I have. And I was reading the other day that actually was a video I was watching on YouTube. And this guy was saying that if you have a computer with access to the internet and you know how to use it and you speak English, the world is yours.
Wow.
That was the point.
Really?
If you have a computer with access to the internet and you speak English, you should find opportunities left, right, and center. But to some people, it's really hard to find opportunities. So, Chip, you've been helping people find those opportunities. You have a YouTube channel that you talk about this quite a bit. Tell us about that, please.
Yeah, wow, that's a deep thing. I think that, like I said prior, I think that we have to know what you can do to help people. I think it's all about helping people, and when you do that, things happen to you. Things come to you, and I think, like Daniel, he's helping people with financial management. I'm helping people grow their business with marketing, and I think that courses is a big thing with training and courses right now. The course creation market has just exploded. If you can teach someone, right, you give a man a fish or give a woman a fish, or you teach them how to fish, right? So I think if we teach them how to fish instead of giving them the fish, especially on the online space, and you have it in a way, not just doing it, because it's one thing doing it, it's another thing marketing it. So it's two separate things, because you can create something all you want, but then you have to find a potential buyer from it. So you see your influence. That's where your social media comes in. That's why I help people with social media marketing. Your influence when it comes to your Facebook, your LinkedIn, your contacts. Because there's one thing that I know in business that I've learned over these 15 years is that you have to have a good product, right? A good product or service. You have to have good marketing and branding. Your website has to look good. And then the third thing is you have to have good contacts. So if people don't know who you are, right, Sam? They don't buy from you. Like I said, if you didn't know that someone referred me, I would not be sitting here. You understand? So my contacts, you have to precede you, and you get good contacts by putting stuff out there. There's a video that's by a guy named Ira Glass, and this is more for the creative people that are listening to this, and it's called he's NPR, This American Life, and he says that your taste in creativity is sometimes better than what you can produce. For instance, I like to eat, but I am not a chef. So, but I love good food, right? But I cannot cook that well. So, but he said to get that gap, you have to create a volume of work. So I think that's the thing. You just have to start. So if you're somewhere and you're not where you want to be as a creative, I tell photographers all the time, I mentor, I say, you know what? Take pictures in your backyard of flowers, not of your kids, of objects, of things to get better, and put yourself on a deadline, because you close the gap when you have that volume of work. You close the gap when you have a volume of work and you keep on doing consistently, and you get great feedback.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And Sam, to follow up on that, just as Chip was saying, when you find out how you can help people, I would put it a little differently, of trying to determine what the needs are. It's the same concept, but what are the needs around you? What do people need? And that can be a hard thing to answer. But ultimately, if you can identify, you can put your finger on a need, then you start supplying that, and business is going to happen, right? You're going to be able to sell whatever you sell. The grapes when people need grapes, you're going to be able to sell the coaching if people need coaching. I think one of the challenges that we have in America is that a lot of people want to sell things that other people don't really need. So then we're pushing marketing really hard, trying to get something sold, and ultimately it's not really a need. And so I think trying to find the need is helpful. And as far as how do you get somebody to do what they don't want to do? First thing you do is you keep in mind that everything worth doing is hard. So that's just life, right? And I think you could grow up. I think you just recognize, hey, look, growing up, becoming a man is accepting, like you said, Sam, accepting responsibility for what needs to be done and doing it. And I think that could be a hard thing. And I also think it's helpful. Everybody differs on consequences, but if we just look at the way the world is, the world can be very harsh at times. And I think that there's a place for negative consequences when we choose the easy path. There are so many proverbs that talk about, a little resting, a little folding of the hands, and poverty is on you like a bandit. So, we need to not think that, well, I don't want to do it. There's a lion in the field, so I'm not going to go in the field. Well, then you're not going to have any crops. You have to accept some risk in life. You have to push a little bit. And I think we've kind of created a culture a little bit that says, well, we don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. And the reality is we have to make ourselves uncomfortable at times, right? You're going to tell somebody about the most important thing in the world, right? You're going to tell somebody about who Jesus is and what he's done for us. That can be a very difficult conversation for somebody who doesn't want to hear it. And that's going to make you uncomfortable to share it. But ultimately, that's one of the things that we're called to do.
What else are we going to do? Not do it?
Right, because we're uncomfortable.
Exactly. Let me bring in the creativity issue here, because a lot of people that will be at home and they're thinking of ways in which they can pivot and position themselves in different ways. Some of those will be creative. And Chip, you brought this in a little bit. I'm trying to read up until the beginning of this year, up until the pandemic. I've been able to read about 2 books a week for the last few years.
Wow.
And through audiobooks mainly. And I've developed this real discipline for it. And it's, I read. But I figure the content is there. And I'm a full extrovert. So for me, listening to somebody, I can contend with them with the content much better than, reading the page. And one of those books was Atomic Habits. It had a profound impact on me. James Clear is the guy.
Great book.
Yeah, and he mentions this photography school, and I've got the reference here for you. Professor Jerry Olsman, professor at University of Florida. He divided the film, the photography into 2 groups, right? So the 2 groups were this group over here. You guys will be graded based on quantity. So take as many photos as you can take, right? So take lots of photos. And this group over here, you'll be judged on quality of your photos. So I don't care if you have 20. I just need 1 or 2. Or, you'll be judged on quality. And it's fascinating that consistently what happened is that the quantity group produced, as you can imagine, hundreds, thousands of photos, and the quality group produced a much smaller number. But when they analyzed who the best photographer, the best photos came from, it did not come from the quality group. The absolute best photos came from the quantity group, which the lesson here is, if you're going to produce a volume of work, as I think Chip was saying, if you're going to produce lots and lots of options of that piece of writing or that voiceover, or if you're just going to keep on, you're going to keep learning from those things. And every now and again, you come up with something transcendent and beautiful. So there is something for that hard work of going back to the drawing board, and trying again and trying harder and trying. But you've got to get out of Netflix. So let's talk about that for a moment. If you're going to make money at home, right? How much should you invest your time in doing it? So you mentioned, you're a workaholic. My difficulty is working too much. And for others, it may be not working at all. I just have this brilliant idea, but there is this new series I need to watch. Need is the key word here. And they go on and watch that series. What do you have to say to those, to the people that their temptation isn't working too much, it's working too little.
Yeah, I just think it's what's your goal, and that's an excellent book, by the way. I know that story well, Sam. I mean, that's just it's so transformational. We need to if you need to know what your goals are, and then know what your financial situation is. If that doesn't motivate you, I don't know what does. You know, First of all, we're blessed to have a roof over our heads, right? Internet, lights, water, food. But I think it's really your intrinsic motivation, why you get up every morning. And I think that nobody can motivate you like you. You have to have an accountability partner too. I think that's important. A lot of people miss that one, right? When you're working from home, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're doing things, you need to have someone that a friend of mine says that loves you, but that's not impressed by you. And what that means is that they need to be able to ask you the tough questions. Hey, did you get up and did you do what you needed to do? Put yourself on a deadline, because there's sometimes with me, I call it squirrel moments, right, Sam? I'll be on one site and I have 5 tabs open, and then 20 minutes later, I say, you know what? I watched 2 live streams and I read 3 articles in the newspaper, and I didn't get any work done. You understand what I'm saying? So it's those squirrel moments. And then I have a accountability partner I call, and we go at the end of each week and we say, what did you do? Why didn't you do this? And we go through. And I know on Fridays at 12 noon, I have to check in with him to make sure that I get. So I don't want to be the guy that's like, you know what? I didn't get it done. Even though he's not my boss, I don't want to disappoint him, because here's a key fact that I've learned is that we will disappoint ourselves quicker than we will disappoint others. You hear me? We will disappoint ourselves quicker. So when that accountability partner comes in, that means that, especially someone who really cares about your success, you're not going to disappoint them. Because I felt bad. I said, you know what? I'm not going to disappoint my friend, because I'm on the hook for him. Even though, he's not, I don't lose anything if I don't do it, but it's just my psyche, my mindset. So that's my thing.
Thank you. Daniel, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, absolutely. If we go back to something I said earlier, which is that our whole lives are ultimately to worship the Lord, right? And we spend our time entertaining ourselves. Not that entertainment in itself is inherently a negative thing, but I don't think that's us worshiping God. Work was created. Work is a good thing, and I think that as we submit ourselves to the Lord, we will work, because ultimately that provides us way more satisfaction than being entertained. And ultimately, I'm agreeing with Chip that accountability is crucial for entrepreneurs and certainly helpful when you're working at home. I also think that it's really a sin to waste moments. I know that's a heavy word to use, but ultimately anything that we do that's outside of the will of God is sin. So ultimately that's a heart issue. And if we can recognize, hey, I'm doing this, and particularly somebody who's a Christian who recognizes, oh, I'm spending too much time on Netflix or playing video games for younger guys. What do you do about that? You say, well, I'm struggling with this. And ultimately you say, if I'm really struggling with it, that means that I haven't really repented of it. And when I do repent of it, then I can ask God to really help change that. And certainly it's very difficult with any habit that you have to try to change out of it. But ultimately we have to trust God and do our best to try to break those kinds of habits.
That is an amazing dimension to time management that you added. Adding sin to time management was very interesting. Let me pivot now as we're talking about pivoting. Let's pivot the conversation to something else. We talked to another dimension. We talked at first about the opportunities that we have to make money in a different way and to work and productive. The second thing we talked about is taking responsibility for things yourself. The third thing I want to talk about is the responsibility of the church, a local church especially, when people have tried, they are not successful. What should a local church do? So the first dimension I want to bring is for the church to look for its own members and what they can offer, and reach out to them to do services if they need them. So there is a saying in England that a British pound, the dollar, there's pound. So the sterling pound, it goes around 6 Jewish hands before it gets to Gentile. So because there is this really this culture among Jews to, if there is a Jew that has another a company that offers something I need, I'm going to go to him first because I'm going to get a better service from him and I'll be helping him. Do you think the local church has some responsibility in trying to engage its own members before they go to those that are maybe Christians, of course, but outside of that community? Does a local community have the responsibility, and is that a good thing?
Daniel,
Anyway.
you want to go ahead?
Yeah, send that one to me first, huh? That's a really challenging question, Sam.
Yeah,
I would really put that in the gray area, so to speak, of what the intention is of the person who's buying the product. I think there are times where, as believers, we may we may pray about it legitimately and feel like, absolutely, I should not be sending this to somebody who is in the church. I should be giving this to somebody who's not. Conversely, there may very well be the case that if you are giving it to somebody in the church, I think a big question here is what does it mean? Going back to Jesus's famous parable of being a neighbor, right? Who is a neighbor to the man, the Samaritan? And that's a great question for us to ask. And we have to remember, particularly in a time like this, where it's very trying to see all of these needs everywhere and to so easily to be overwhelmed, recognizing there's so many needs to be met, that God doesn't call us to solve all of the problems in the entire world. He gives us a domain under his domain that we are responsible to be part of. And that first portion is our families, right? We are responsible for our families' headship over it. We have to deal with our families and take care of that. And anyone who's, not treating his mother right, shouldn't really be going to turn around and trying to help other people, right? Take care of your family first, really. Then from there, you go and deal with the people that are sort of in your community, in your area. And absolutely, if you know somebody in your church that's struggling, they have a business and they paint walls and they are in a position where you know that they are in a situation they need some money, and you have a wall that can be painted, you got some money in your pocket, that you should really seriously pray about hiring that guy to paint your wall, even if you don't necessarily need to be painted, if you have the funds to do so. And I really think there's two camps according to this, right? There's people in coronavirus who are really suffering, people in coronavirus who really aren't. And when people who are blessed with wealth are not using it in a time where things are really difficult, I think you really need to think about, are there any ways for me to use the resources that I have, and not necessarily giving? I think you're better off hiring somebody than you are giving it to them directly, but thinking about ways that you can absolutely go and use that. And one other thing that I'll mention is when it talks about, loving our neighbors, this is a great time to love our neighbors, very practically speaking, right? So many people are at home. Yes, you can't get within 6 feet, but you can get you can get to 6 feet, right? You can still have a conversation at 6 feet. And to that end, there's an organization of multiple churches got together and started something called Street Vine Lights. And the idea is a resource that's online that can connect you with your neighbors, so you know your neighbors' names, gives you tips and all kinds of resources that you can, if there's something that's beyond you, you can still be able to help them by seeing all their tips pages and everything else. So if you go to streetvinelights.org and sign up there, you'll see it. I mean, I have no affiliation with it. It's just an organization that's doing something, right? And it's a conglomeration of churches in the DMV district, Maryland and Virginia, that are trying to do that. So I think that there's a lot there, right? And how we love our neighbors at a time like this. I don't want people to be overwhelmed, but I want them to pray and think, what does the Lord have for me in this time?
Amen. I'm with you. No, it's a great answer. You summed it up. I think because I was thinking, at first, we want the church to use us, but then, like I said, it is that gray area. It's that gray area. I wouldn't probably be where I am if it wasn't for church members. I know I wouldn't be where I was for church members using me on certain projects. That's just facts for me, right? Taking chances on me when I didn't have a lot of experience, taking chances on me when I did stuff for free, for low cost. So I get that. But there's a time and a place for everything, like a season, right? Where you outgrow some things and then you need to move on. But I think if you're starting out, it's an excellent place for you to make connections, authentic connections. And then even if they can't refer you business, they can refer you to other people, because there are people in the church, a local church, that know other people. For instance, there was a guy at a church I attended growing up. He was a president of a local nonprofit, and he helped me get an internship there at another nonprofit. He wasn't hiring, but his friend was another president of another nonprofit and got me into church. So just through those connections. And I think that we have to think about connections first, and not just, hey, I need this business, or I need this, I need that. Because I think once you connect with your heart, everything else comes in play. I think that's where I am. I think your heart has to be in the right place. And I think that the churches are a great place to start, but also we have to be careful of how we mix the church and business as well, because things can go a little strange too sometimes. So just be careful about that. I think it's a great place to start, but we have to be careful.
Yeah, I'd like to say one more thing about that, Sam, if I can. Christians with a proper theology of work, that God created work and work is good, Christians should be the best. Right. We should be able to go and look in the community and say, okay, who's ethical? Who's going to do a great job? Who's going to do the best job? And ultimately, I think if people really understand who they are in Christ and are working appropriately, they should be the best for the job. And so if you take out all other pieces and just evaluate it from a purely worldly standpoint, you should be hiring Christians for your work. And if you're not, and do that, because just to what Chip said, there are a number of times that, I don't know what your experiences are like, Chip, where you've worked with somebody who goes to the church and they give you not great work. They don't do a great job. And they kind of expect grace because they didn't do well. And you say, you know what? You shouldn't expect that. You should do a great job for me. And just like you should do a great job for everybody, because you're working as unto the Lord. And, we do extend grace, but we should never presume upon it.
That's a really interesting subject, and if I could summarize what you said, in how, at least how I understood what you said, if you know Mr. Joseph has just been let go, and he's painted his house really well, and you can have some extra cash, call him to see if he's interested in painting your own house. Whether you need it now or in a couple of years, if that's something you could do it, because we need to support each other. At the same time, don't turn the church into a business network. Right. That's not what it's for. Don't try to I'm going to church because I'm going to create great connections there, and therefore I'm going to grow my business. Right. Don't do it. It's just not good.
Jesus weaved a whip together and drove those people out.
Exactly.
Yeah, watch out for that. And church people realize this. Communities realize when you are genuinely trying to offer something, or when you are trying to take advantage of them. I want to end with an interesting story. When this pandemic hit, we realized my wife had to stop working. She worked from home before. But now she had to stop and take care of the boys at school. And, trying to help ends meet is something that everybody needs to do. And pastors is especially, because, we need to be very careful with finances to make sure that it matches. And there were many things we wanted to do in the house, and we just knew that we couldn't do them. And then this neighbor came through. His name is Mike, and he started saying, what do you need help with? This? Okay, let me find a guy to help you. And he fixed this electric problem, and he fixed that pipe, and he fixed this, and he found somebody who had some furniture that they needed to get rid of, and we needed the furniture. He found a way to get rid of lots of stuff. For 4 years we have been piled up because we couldn't quite bring ourselves to spend a few $100s to get the junk removal people to come in. Well, he brought his truck and he got rid of it. And it was just one thing after the other. My wife calls him Magic Mike. That's what she calls it. Because, be careful what you tell Mike you've got a problem with. Mike will fix it, or find somebody that will fix it. So we've been on the receiving end of a neighbor who said, I can help you with many different things, and I'm going to do this for you. As it turns out, Magic Mike has a business, and he was struggling to market that business, Chip. That's right up your street. And digital marketing is what I've been researching for years. It's something that I'm very familiar with. So I said, hey, Mike, do you need some help with this? And he looked at me and said, yes, I do. So now I'm doing SEO for his website, and I'm helping him to connect with great copywriters and so on. And it's such a pleasure to do that for him, because he genuinely offered to help me with things that I genuinely needed. And that's the kind of neighborhood I want to live in. So I'm very happy at this moment with this whole arrangement. And it isn't a, you do this for me, I'll do that for you. It's more profound than that. It's what can I offer you that you need rather than the opposite. It's the idea of giving rather than taking. And people that are generous enough to go the extra mile and help others, God seems to always find a way for them to have what they need. Friends, it's great to now make two friends. We didn't know each other before this interview. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Chip. Thank you so much, Daniel, for coming through and helping us with this. If you need to find them later, just Google them. You'll be able to find them. And thank you for joining us in A&N In Depth, when today we looked at how to make money at home. We looked at money as a holy thing. God is not scared of money. God has blessed us with a way to help families and also help each other. So if you're going through some difficulties, listen again to this podcast, listen again to this video on YouTube, send it to some friends that perhaps need to listen to it, and find ways in which you can find opportunities in this situation that we find ourselves in. And if you are in a position to help others, then of course, please do so as quickly and as much as you possibly can. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.